for a while and you feel like you've hit a plateau and you're just not improving anymore. You've upgraded your hardware, but you're still not able to be as fast as you would like. Well, guess what? I did that too, okay? I'm as guilty as you are. And that's exactly why Racine and myself created what we call the advanced way to learn. By using the techniques that we're about to show you, we were able to win national championships, and we're now coaching real-life drivers and sim racers all across the globe. So let me tell you why you absolutely need this to improve your racing skills. On this platform, you'll go through 5 learning steps. The first one is going to be to watch video lessons so you can take in all that theory. The second step will be to answer quizzes. We've created some questions to test your knowledge. Next, you'll have to partake in challenges. Here, you'll have to prove to yourself that you can apply what you've learned. You'll go on track and you'll try to beat the instructor's lap times or sector times. Following the challenge, you'll be able to send your onboard replay so instructors and other community members can help you improve. And lastly, you can get involved in the community to meet some new teammates and learn from others. This platform is a back and forth discussion between us, the instructor, and you, the students. If you're serious about becoming the best driver out there, this is the advanced way to learn.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Round 6 of the PRL GTP GT3 Series brings us to Interlagos in a bit of a calendar shake-up. It's our final race in which there's a small chance of rain. Myself, Ian O'Leary, Darragh Thacker along with you for this round of the championship. Once again, 4 to go, Darragh. We've got the drop weeks applied to our points. It's getting interesting now as everybody knows where they stand and knows what they need to do in these final 4 weeks to become one of the 2 champions of this series.
And we're really in a position where we can kind of judge exactly where drivers are, with a couple of these drivers that were near the front of the field in the last few races not attending a couple of the opening rounds, or the odd one, maybe the opening round of the second round. We kind of really now get a sense of exactly where they lie in the championship and really how they can progress further up, because it's tied in both the championships, but a little bit of work still to do. But also fun that we get a little bit of a shake-up for the calendar, because it means that it keeps us on our toes up here as well, doesn't it?
It certainly has kept us on our toes. As I say, this is the only chance remaining with a chance, or race remaining with a chance of rain. So Sebring, Suzuka and Road America all have 0%. So be watching out for that tonight. Although I was listening to people earlier on complaining about the fact it might be foggy for the rest of the season. We'll see whether that materialises or not as we get towards the end of November, when, of course, our season draws to a close. I mentioned the drop weeks are applied. That means the championship standings look a bit like this, and they're a little bit closer as well. Pat Pelcher only 10 points ahead of Nathan Ray after a stumble at Silverstone. Shane Larson missed the first round, of course, so he's been miles behind until this week when the drop weeks have been applied. He's 25 behind. Timothy Fried-Larsen and Edwin Enoff are only separated by a few points, and it's very close, actually, from about third place on backwards. Darian Roy's just missing out on the top 5. He's a point ahead of Andrew Ellis. Machidini, Miguel Rios and Bradley Holly round out the top 10 in GTP. A little bit less close in GT3. Ken Copeland missed the third round of the season, but he's been... sorry, I should get on the team standing. I'll do the GT3 drivers. I'm messing our producer around. I'm sorry. Ken Copeland's leading the GT3 drivers by 28 points. That's the biggest leading margin by far. Brent Gardner's DNF at Silverstone has held him back a bit. He's 34 back, with Michael Brooks now back in the picture again with the drop weeks applied. Evan Henneman's 5th place. Matthew Maturo is just outside of that top 5, with Eduardo Aguirre also back in the fray now after his DNS at week 3 has been written off. Adam Ostrich, Kyle Robertson and Mark Kalin are all rounding out the top 10. Now I'll do what I'm told and go for the GTP team standings. It is 26 points between Aerotechnics, Nightblind Racing and Solpet Precision Racing, with Parabola Kobo and Waterback Racing not too far behind either. It's one of the closest teams championship we've got in all of the PRL. Parabola Azure are in the top 5, and there's a huge jump back to SRTE. Techsport Academy are 7th at a Project 91, Driven Esports Pro and Fury Simsport. Most of those at the bottom not scoring many points anymore. SRTE GT3 are leading in the team standings here with 28 points over the wrong stuff. Then it is Techsport Academy, and then a bit of a jump back to Waterback Racing. Drivetrain Motorsport Green are in the top 5 by only 4 points ahead of Solpet Precision Racing. GT3, Tachyon Simsport, Drivetrain Motorsport Black, Rogue Racing and Championship Racing Collective are all very close to a top 5 placing, but mostly just outside of it for the moment. Before we go any further here this evening, let's thank the sponsors, of course, that make these broadcasts possible, starting with Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision 5 coupon code. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision 5 coupon code. Bookkicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. For more information, visit moradness.com. Mr. Hedge iRacing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. A great addition to any sim room. And finally, Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on their socials to become a better driver. Big thanks to those sponsors who make these broadcasts possible each and every week here on RaceSpotTV. We'll be racing, don't forget, back at the normal time if you're outside of North America next week from 1:30 in the UK, 2:30 in Europe on Tuesday night, and then it is 2 o'clock in Europe most nights. Other than that, of course, no more racing this week. You have to wait till Sunday night where we'll be going Cup Series racing again from Martinsville from the back to the normal time again. So hopefully you can join us for that. But for now, we've got GTP GT3 action to enjoy. Qualifying currently underway. Brandon Wilson currently on the pole position. A driver no longer in the top 10 of the drivers' standings anymore because he hasn't been at the final 2 weeks, or the previous 2 weeks, I should say. He does have a pole position to his name, though, this season, and a fastest lap. He's clearly a very quick driver, although as I'm harping on about him, he has been overtaken by Pat Pochat and Shane Larson. We always seem to see this in GTP. It's very changeable, even after 2 laps have been completed, which they have been now for Pochat and Larson. It's very changeable indeed as to who's on pole.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we enjoy watching and seeing these drivers jostling it out for pole position, even in a shortened session when they've not got too much time to make these laps count. It really does show that there is track progression in these qualifying sessions, and drivers really have to be there towards the end. It's also nice to see close times like we're seeing in the GT3s, Jim Felice and Michael Brooks only being, well, I was going to say only 7 thousandths apart, but then Kane Copeland comes in and spoils that party. I was getting a little bit worried though when we were looking at some of the aerial shots that it is a little bit foggy here at Interlagos, but this is the most ran track in the PRL in the GT3s of any, so drivers are more likely to have a little bit more experience around here.
I think this is the kind of fog as well where you can see where you're going. I mean, we're on board with Jim Felice at the moment. It's making our helicopter shots absolutely useless, but it is not taking any effect, I don't think, on the drivers and what they can see here at the moment as we go on board with Jim Felice here. Only 7 thousandths ahead of Michael Brooks. Ken Copeland is now at the top of the standings. I mean, 28 points doesn't sound like a lot when you're scoring 55 for a race win, and the maximum on a one given day is 57 with pole and the fastest lap. But actually, that is quite a lot to gain because, of course, 50 odd points is expecting there to be, I think, 50 drivers in the field. Obviously, there isn't 50 drivers in the field in GT3. In fact, that's not possible. So, actually, Ken Copeland, I think, needs a DNF at some point, really, for the others to get back into the fray. And considering he hasn't finished outside of the top 2 in any of the races he's been at, that's proving to be fairly unlikely, I would say.
Yeah, you always get an attendance bonus in this particular series just because of the amount of points that you're able to pick up. So if you miss a race, it's going to be very difficult to recuperate those points over the course of the rest of the season when you've only really got another 3-4 races to do so. So drivers really have to be on it, and if they're not here, they have to make up for it. There's no excuses, or there is an excuse, but there's nowhere else to fall back in terms of the championship. They have to be delivering every single week, and I think that's what a couple of the drivers are going to be thinking about. For the likes of the 2 Larsons up in the GTPs, they missed, in Shane Larson's case, the opening round, Timothy Friis Larson the second round. They can somewhat recover because then they can still build up those points with them being able to drop those rounds. If you miss 2 races, though, it's an absolute mountain to climb to get back into any kind of championship contention.
That's Edwin Onofre pretty much halving his gap to the pole, and he goes 7th now with that lap time in the Cadillac. Comfortably sits top 10 in the driver standings at the moment as we go back to Brett Gardner, giving the Mustang another run out as it's getting used to life in the PRL, of course. Recently released on iRacing and has had its fair amount of success as well. Of course, it was in the hands of Michael Brooks when it won the opening round at Mosport all those weeks ago, now 5 weeks ago, would you believe it? And since then, it has more been about the Mercedes. 3 wins in the last 4 for the Mercedes of Ken Copeland, with the exception of Jake Cummings winning Zolder for round number 3. That was a bit of a change up to the norm as we go up towards the line with Tony Costello now in the McLaren, another one of the pretty decently successful manufacturers. Jim Felice is currently 2nd in the standings with one of those, and he is going to go a little bit quicker. Tony Costello just moves ahead of Joey Costello into 5th place.
And a very good lap time in that. Again, good to see some close lap times as we get towards the end of this section. It's what we're going to be hoping to see throughout the race. Interlagos, a track where you can make moves. So some nice tight trains could generate some overtaking down at turn 1, down at turn 4. Even through the middle sector, you can see opportunistic moves being made. And Edwin Onofre, he's going to gain himself a couple of spots on the grid up to P5. But really, drivers are going to have to be getting to the line pretty quickly because you're going to have to be on your laps now if you want to have them count.
Certainly. Less than a minute to go until the start of this race. A bit of a slide through the final corner there for Jim Felice. That could ruin all the work up until that point, I'm afraid. As he makes it up towards the line, I'm I'm not sure if this is going to be a very big improvement, if it is one at all. I think he's losing time as well on this run up towards the line. Let's see for Jim Felice. It's going to need to be a low 32, really, and he hasn't got one. He's not even in the 32, I'm afraid. That is the end of his session, and he is going to be staying in third. Evan Henneman is still out there on the circuit at the moment. There he is in his McLaren, who's very improving very minorly, if that's a word, and he will not finish his lap anyway. So that is his session done and dusted. He'll be 14th in a field of at least 19. Ed Nicholas and Jake Cummings, both in the GT3 field, have not set times, so we'll see if they get onto the grid or not. In the meantime, let's have a look at how these drivers took pole position, starting with Pat Pelchat in the GTPs. We take a ride on board in a few moments' time as to what it looks like around Interlagos to go in one of these prototypes. And glad to say that it's been brought back to the sports car racing calendar worldwide at these GTP style cars, of course. At least the Porsche and the Cadillac were coming around here for the World Endurance Championship round not so long ago. And, well, he's not driving one of those, Pat Pelchat. These cars are now back on the circuit, if you like, here at Interlagos. Down in towards turn number 1. Really high-speed braking zone, tipping downhill, making sure you get the opening chicane right to set your lap off on a good foot. And then you get into a very different section indeed. This first sector is quite high speed. The second sector is definitely not.
No, I mean, it's such a difference between the first, final, and middle sectors. Of course, almost the two pincer points of the track are down here at turn 4 and 5, I should say, and then, of course, down at Zhungsao, which is the final meaningful corner. But coming up to Ferradura, you're rising up the hill. You've got to find your braking point and your turning in point. Double apex right-hander, difficult to nail. Then onto the brakes into this trickier right-hander. The car continuing to slow as you're then having to almost tiptoe your way through turn 9, running up onto the outside curb at turn 10, but that can be slippy, as we're seeing from Pat Pelchat, before Bico Tapato at turn 10. Another very slow corner. You can use the camber on the exit to help you a little bit with your acceleration, but the downhill nature of turn 11 doesn't help at all. Turn 12, though, at Zhungsao, probably the most crucial corner on the racetrack to nail. You need that good run out of the final corner, and even with a slide, Pat Pelchat got pole on this lap.
I think that line through Bico Tapato, especially at turn 10, just showed a really smooth lap. A driver who absolutely knows what he's doing here, getting right close to the left-hand wall, and that was the run up towards the line that took him pole position in this race. Let's see the difference now on board with Kent Copeland here in the Mercedes, down in towards turn number 1. And actually, I think Interlagos is one of those circuits where there aren't too many corners where the speed difference is really big. The speed difference is going to obviously be large on the straights, as it always is, and especially into Ferradura as well, which is uphill through turn 6 and 7. But just watch the middle sector, especially the corners through there. These GT3s are quick. They've got good mechanical grip, and that's going to prove to be a problem in the race.
Yeah, I think if we are going to have a nightmare with it, being the day that it is, the GTPs trying to overtake the GT3s in the middle sector could be it, realistically. It's going to be tough. We'll see it here with Ken Copeland, how much speed he's able to carry, but we've seen it all the way throughout the season. The GTPs don't have that much of an inherent advantage over the GT3s for tall in these slow speed corners, and it's just going to be an absolute nightmare, especially if you want to run it around the outside at turn 9. It's tricky on the acceleration around there. Sending it at turn 10 at Bico Tapato can be tricky because cars can concertina up. We've seen trains form in the GT3s. It's going to be dangerous. I'm not, I'm expecting the first pass between the GTPs and the GT3s to be a little bit difficult. I think drivers will be able to sort themselves out after there, but it's going to be a hectic 5-10 minutes or so as we see them overtake for the first time.
It certainly is, I would say, but it always is, I suppose, in this series. The real heads-up circuits, I think, are behind us now in terms of the really dangerous ones. Zolder was the one that IRAD really circled at the start of the day, at the start of the season as a really dangerous one, but I think that they're mostly multi-class circuits people will be used to. So let's see how that goes as we have a look at the starting grid ahead of round 6 of the PRL GTP GT3 Series. And as we've just seen, it's Pat Pelchat who sets the best time, with 1/10 back to Brandon Wilson and Shane Larson, who are both very close to him indeed. Dave Menino with a good qualifying there into the top 5, with Edwin Onofre just behind, and Jeff Evans, who is 6th. Seventh place will be Nathan Ray, who's second in the championship, but always moves up in the race. Miguel Rios is the final driver within a second of pole. Bradley Holly is in ninth place, making his 497th start in the PRL as he edges ever closer to the big 500. Devon Young rounds out the top 10 with Nicholas Schwartz and Neil Alexander to round out row 6. Then the final two, Mathieu Denis and Barry Cochran, round out the field. A smaller GTP grid than in GT3, where Kent Copeland has taken pole. Michael Brooks is second, ahead of the best of the McLarens, Tim Feliz. Brett Gardner is in fourth, and then it's an all SRT row 3 with Joey and Tony Costello. They're not in the same cars, bizarrely. The two drivetrain and motorsport black cars are, though. They'll be on the inside together in 7th and 9th. Miles Brown ahead of Kyle Robertson. On the other side, Eduardo Aguiar will be just ahead of Adam Ostrich, who in turn has outqualified his Sole Precision Racing teammate for 10th and 11th place. John Krauser is in 12th. Then it's Mark Kalin in 13th place in the Mustang with Evan Henneman in 14th. Sean Murphy and Bowie Surin round out row 8 with Doug Evans, the final driver, to set a time. TJ Yankee is the final driver to set a time. Apologies. Then we've got, oh no, he's not even. Wow. I am not a good commentator. Ian Brown is instead. It's Jake Cummings and Evelyn Googler who'll be starting at the back. And hopefully they do start from the back, because sometimes people get to these practice sessions and don't quite get to the race. So hopefully that's not the case on this occasion. They are joining up at the moment. I'll tell you something that's grabbed my eye actually here at Darragh. We're waiting for the timing screen to, the timing screen gear section. As to how many laps is going to be. At 45 laps. It's one of those real short circuits, supposed like Zolder and Mosport. It is, you can really get dizzy around here. It's very short, and so lots of lappery you'd expect. A busy racetrack I'd expect as well.
And you'd think there's lots and lots of.
Oh goodness.
That is not something I expected to see this evening. But I heavily rate that, though.
He's going to race with it on. Oh,
well,
yes.
That's fantastic. Well, that's what we've turned up for.
I don't know.
I want you to notice us as well.
This
is great.
Else some costumes. Because as you say, it is the day. We're speaking to you from the future in November, but I know in America it is still the 31st of October, and I wonder. I'm hoping that's exactly the kind of thing when I tuned into this broadcast to do it. That's exactly the kind of thing I was hoping to see. So there you go. Thanks TJ Yankee for providing us with some Halloween headwear, I'll call it.
And I remember a few months ago, actually, the scariest moment of, I think, me doing any PRL commentary was me calling him Taiji 5 times in a row. But that costume is fantastic. It's nice to see drivers dressing. I know that Arjuna Kagapathi is doing the iRacing official IndyCar series dressed as a racing car driver.
That's rubbish.
But
that's not a costume. That's just normal attire.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't even know what the Star Wars. It's a Star Wars helmet, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
No, I could. It might not even be. My film knowledge, as you well know, is woeful. So I'll leave him to explain that one later, if he wants to. So we'll leave him to that. Yeah, you need to turn up in the general public in sort of racing driver outfit. Then you'd look unnormal. But on here, that's. As I say, that's just normal attire. Anyway, well, we're hearing we haven't got any more Halloween outfits, so we'll have to just entertain ourselves with TJ Yankee later on, and I'm sure we will do as this race progresses. Of course, an hour long now in the GTP GT3 Series. These little bit longer races give us that little bit more entertainment, actually. I'm quite a fan of having just one longer race in the evening, and it's certainly going to provide for us again here at Interlagos as they make their way up towards the green flag. Pat Pelchat from the championship lead, but also the qualifying lead, gets us underway, and immediately there's a big challenge for second place down the inside. Shane Larson looking for the move, and he's got it in towards turn number 1. That was aggressive, but it's worked on Brandon Wilson in towards turn 1 for the GT3s, who of course get away very early indeed, and it's been carnage. There's been contact, and someone's gone around. I'm afraid right at the very back, Miles Brown has been spun around at turn 1.
An awful start. I mean, it was nearly 5 wide as they came to the line. Incredible scenes in the GT3. Still drivers trying to pick their way through. Nearly 3 wide down the Reta Aposta into Interlagos at turn number 4, but they're just about going to single file their way out. The GTPs even nearly going side by side at Ferradura, which was a very scary place to go. Driver off at turn number 4. And again, drivers tumbling down the field. It's a relatively hefty field in these GT3s, and they're just trying to pick their way through as there was almost a blanket over all 21 drivers across the line.
Yeah, that was Jake Cummings who's gone around, by the way. I believe that Adam Ostrich has also been delayed on this opening lap, although I could be wrong. We'll have a look at opening lap replays as we always do in 5 minutes or so, as we let the opening moments of this race filter their way through. Pat Pelchat is the leader, ahead of Shane Larson, who made a aggressive move in towards turn 1. Brandon Wilson is knocked back down to 3rd, then Dave Menonose hold on to 4th, and Nathan Ray is racing his way up the field, as he always does. He's in the top 5 after 1 lap.
Yeah, great start from him. Oh, nearly a send down in towards turn number 1. Car driver going deep and nearly off the road, but just keeping it in the background. That was a dangerous little moment, and it shows how easy it is to lock up the Monster Eyes app for tonight. But we've seen them all through the season going a little bit too deep, and eyes probably widening in the cockpit for Edwin Onofre as they come down in towards turn number 4. Actually, this is behind him and offer. It's Miguel Rios. Of course, it's Miguel Rios. It's been him all season long in that yellow and black car. Orange and black car it is.
Orange, yeah, don't...
Can't even get colours right tonight.
In towards turn number 4. That, by the way, working his way through Evans in the Acura. He started from the pit lane, so don't be alarmed by him. There were no incidents to work out in terms of contact, major contact in the GTPs in the opening lap, so that's very good news indeed. Just Jeff Evans starting from the very back, and he's I'm sure had a bit of a bad time having to work his way through on all of that. This is Carl Robertson and Eduardo Aguiar going in towards Ferradura, and it's round the outside for Aguiar. This should be impressive. He's got off the road in doing so. Probably not going to be able to take that place as a result when he tucks back in with John Krause right in behind as well. But thankfully, after a bit of contact early on in GT3, it has calmed down. And actually, the early green flag for them meant that they were all fanning out into a real formation, even through turn 14, to be honest. That's where they saw the green flag, with the kink on the way towards the line. So that wasn't ideal at all. As we got our first pit stop, Evan Young is already in.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that this is maybe a planned pit stop, but I don't know why you'd put yourself that out into the GT3 traffic for position rather than getting yourself some clean air. But whatever he's doing is likely to be forced. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the race. On board, though, with Neil Alexander right behind Bradley Holly, he's going very, very wide at turn 4 and 5. Track very wide on iRacing up towards Ferradura as get themselves in towards that pinched apex. It's really difficult to try and make a send here at Interlagos. None of the corners are particularly low speed. A lot of them are quite medium speed corners, and there can be quite a lot of camber and differing lines involved. So it's almost scary to make a move up the inside, and I think that's what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, it is. And everyone just exercising a little bit of caution early on here. I think after the opening lap especially, deciding to take it clean. Goodness me, it was busy back here. 4 wide in the background. Miles Brown is right in the middle here, and he gets sort of pinballed around, doesn't he, between 2 SRTs. I think that could be the 2 Costellos, actually, in the GT3 field. He sort of bounced off the inside one, realised he needed to give that one a bit more space, and then bounced into the outside one and spun himself around almost.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the middle of that, there's absolutely nowhere you can go. You start getting, you're in a pinball machine, basically. There's absolutely nothing you can do. Cars around you, and realistically, deciding exactly where you are. This is TJ. Finding it side by side now. He'd made the overtake, but it's not necessarily done on Doug Evans as they make their way through Bico Tapado. But these two fighting over P16 and P17 for the time being. They don't want to be squabbling for too long because they're losing connection to that train up in front.
TG Yankee doing well, and it's clearly the mass not hindering him. I'm quite impressed actually. It must get very hot in that kind of helmet. I mean, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't look comfortable, but anyway, it's for our entertainment, so I'll take it. This is the midfield of the top 10, if you like, or well, even the battle for third place, to be honest. Brandon Wilson's just pulling himself away from Dave Menino, but not by that much. Nathan Ray is in here as well as Edwin Onofre, who's probably the closest to making a move. If you count out Shane Larson last lap, he was about 3 tenths behind Pat Pelchat at about this point 1 lap ago, but wasn't able to do anything in towards turn 1. Will it be the same story for Edwin and Offra as they make their way up the hill out of Junxiao? Big over the curb there for Ray. That surely doesn't do much for your momentum, even in cars as fast as these, but on Offra not really getting as much slipstream as he would require in towards turn number 1, and so he is stuck in 6th place for the moment.
You can see he's just, tracking at the moment, but not able to make the move stick. This is what's happened to Adam Ostrich.
Oh, no.
Oh my word. And that's even before they get into the corner. There's a car going through the middle there. I don't know who that was, but somebody managed to go behind the first car and then in front of... That's crazy. I don't know how you managed to pick your way through there. It reminds me of, I think it was a motorcycle crash that happened a few years ago at the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, it's Jake Cummings who was in the blue car there getting through. And the funny thing is there, Adam Ostrich was the one rear-ending Jake Cummings there, and very nearly Ostrich sent Cummings straight into his teammate Peter Moller. But thankfully, disaster was averted. As you say, going directly through the middle in towards turn number 4 would have been catastrophic if there was contact, to be honest. That just looked like a misjudgment. Ostrich almost going, so keen to get the slipstream. Here's another look at it from the onboard of so that's the car just behind. That is Peter Moller, as the car just behind as Cummings went straight across him there in towards turn number 4. It was down here. It felt like Ostrich there was almost too close to the car in front of him, to be honest. Misjudged the braking entirely and smacked him really hard. I mean, I'm surprised, to be honest, Jake Cummings to stop.
Yeah, I'll be lucky to get away with that. To be honest, well, yeah, he was lucky to get away with it. But now this is Miles Brown on lap number 2 as they come through side by side. They're all offline. They come together in the middle of the corner, and both drivers involved in that, along with Miles Brown. Like they're not having the best of start. Again, we are seeing these little incidents, but on the whole, maybe to buck the trend a bit, we're seeing the GTPs get away cleaner than the GT3s in this race. We've generally seen the GT3s be quite calm in the early stages and get themselves, 15, 20 minutes in before really starting to battle, but it's kind of been a bit of a flip on that tonight.
That looked like a Grand Prix a little bit, didn't it? Adam Ostrich, Jake Cummings and Miles Brown having their second crash of the day, all with each other. Oh, and Bowie Surin's here in a very awkward situation, having to do a bit of an ungainly reversing job to the inside of turn 9, and does a good job of it actually, getting out the way, but not a place you want to find yourself particularly. What that does show though is that these guys are a lot closer to lapping than I thought they were. Miguel Rios meanwhile has gone for a spin, or at least he's dropped a couple of places in the last few moments. Speaking of spins, that's what happened to Bowie Surin, right in front of the rest of his GT3 field and then the rest of the GTP field as well. Here's Miguel Rios trying to regain some of those places. He's up the inside of Nicholas Schwartz here, and he should regain that all over again as Pat Pelchat meanwhile loses the lead to Shane Larson. He's been really brave on the brakes as Larson in towards turn number 1, and he's got the position again, but look at Pat Pelchat. Oh, the joys of being in second place. He's got the better exit. He can pick his line. He can follow Larson when he wants. He can go a different direction when he wants as well. And at the moment, he's putting that real pressure on the Cadillac now. Good run through turn 4. He gains on the way to 5 and forces Larson to give him some room. In towards Ferradura they go. How are they going to negotiate the Porsche? Oh, Larson dives. He was very brave there. I'm sure the Porsche wouldn't have thanked him for that, but he has held the lead.
And Brandon Wilson in the back of this, really being skillful in following these front 2-3. Pat Pelchat, it looked like he had that run through turn 3, but on the exit of the corner had to check up because there was a GT3 right in front of him, and it meant that he couldn't really use all of that momentum towards turn 4 because it looked like he had quite a big run. This is the overtake for the lead that happened down towards turn 1. Pelchat defending to the inside. Shane Larson actually sneaking to the inside. That's a very, very good move from Shane Larson, catching everybody by surprise. Pat Pelchat didn't think he'd get past a GT3. And in the end, Shane Larson got past him.
Oh, goodness, and they're going either side of GT3s again here. Pat Pelchat's very much in the slipstream, and he's going to have a chance. It's going to have to be a 3-wide pass here on the 2 SRT GT3s who are going to be in the middle of this. Oh, goodness, what a squeeze. Pat Pelchat just about makes it through the middle, but no, he can't quite get it into the lead. They scatter right in front of Brandon Wilson, who loses 2 seconds as a result. And Dave Menino will gain as rain's falling. Rain's falling on the circuit. We've got rain at Interlagos, just as we weren't quite expecting it. And that 34% chance has turned into reality. I swear I saw rain coming out of turn 3. And off goes Brandon Wilson at 4. This race just got very interesting.
Yeah, I saw rain as well, unless both of us are seeing a mirage, quite frankly, but unlikely to do that. Oh my word, this is the move now into Ferradura. GTPs, GT3s, it's a patchwork as they make their way through the horseshoe, just going to pick their way through. This is Edwin on Offra going to the inside, looking on this fourth GT3. I mean, you can see the gaggle of GT3s. There's 3 of them fighting through turn number 9 just in behind as rain is now falling on the circuit. The radar on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you can just see it is moving in. It doesn't look like it's the widest area of rain, but even still, it's going to make quite a difference.
It doesn't. Will it pass over before the end? Can you survive this on dries and make it through, or are you going to have to make 2 stops in this race? This is very exciting indeed, as rain really makes its appearance here in the PRL GTP GT3 Series. Correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe the only time we've had rain this season was for a very fleeting moment at the end of Mosport, where it rained in the final 60 seconds or so. It wasn't hard enough or long enough for it to really make a difference. Oh, it could be 4 wide into turn 1. Miguel Rios is going to try and get through here, but no, they can't. They've got to just sit and watch as off the road goes Carl Robertson, going for a spin right in front of Kalin, who makes contact with him, and he's going to struggle to rejoin now. Is Robertson. He's got to be really careful with this. Meanwhile, Nathan Ray's got past Dave Menino into 4th place here. Ray, very good start from him indeed, as he continues to make places as he always does. There he is, moving up in the Acura. Dave Menino struggling a little bit more in these wet conditions, and don't forget, I believe anyway, the GT3s can sustain this kind of rain a little bit better than the prototypes, who really lose temperature very quickly and really begin to struggle quite quickly as well.
This is just struggle street now for everybody. This is, it's awful to see some of these GTPs sliding around. The GT3s, they're going into turn 1 though, the contact that we saw between Robertson and Kalin, 3 wide there was 2 wide in these GTPs behind. It was just a mass concertina down into the corner, wasn't it? It was a miracle that there wasn't more contact and more damage done between a lot of those guys, but in the end, I don't think Robertson's going to be too pleased, especially after losing all that time. In the end, does he get a hit up the rear by Kalin? No. He gets a tap, actually, from the car in front. Was that Menino, who was involved in the fight? And in the end, it just means that he's stuck on the inside of the corner in a place where you just can't get back onto the racing line, and it's blind. You can't see what's coming.
Yeah, I'm not sure he was actually hit by anybody there, but anyway, it might have been. As we go on board with Nathan Ray here in towards turn 4, they've negotiated most of the traffic now, these two. And so they're free to fight on their own terms. And here goes Menino back to the inside again. Clearly, the traffic wasn't to his liking, but clean air, he is better. He's pushed Ray a little bit wide there, but not quite wide enough. Ray is still alongside on the way towards Ferradura. He's forced to back off, though. As we saw them go through the AstroTurf there was some real moisture being kicked up. As you saw from that radar, the light blue indicating it is actually the lowest intensity of rain, which is well suggesting whether you can make this through on dry tyres or not. But this is a very precarious task now for everybody. When do you make your stop? Do you put dries on? Do you put wets on? Excuse me. Do you have to make 2 stops in this race? How long is this going to last? All these questions are pretty unanswerable now for all of these drivers.
The conditions are going to deteriorate over the course of the next, 10, 15 minutes, and drivers are going to have to make that decision at some point. The rate of the deterioration may be a deciding factor in whether they do make stops or not, but it remains to be seen whether it will get worse. You can see the spray coming off the tyres on the racing line now, not just off track, as you saw a couple of minutes ago, and it's going to mean that drivers are going to start to struggle on their dry tyres. Shane Larson, Pelshad and Wilson, they are, tucked up right together at the moment. It could mean that we see Wilson blink when the other two don't, maybe try something different, but at the same time, they've got a nice lead over the likes of Menino and Ray. They're going to want to keep a hold of that for the time being.
Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I actually think Wilson's the quickest of the 3 at the moment. He just had a really bad run through traffic that first time round, and if he really wants to get through on the 2 ahead, he might well be able to. Nathan Ray looking to regain that 4th place again here on Dave Menino. Not quite able to do into Ferradura, and while they've been looking at each other, they've allowed Edwin and Offra to catch up as Barry Cochrane's off in towards turns 1 and 2. Careful! Oh, goodness, that was a small gap to get through, but he's just about managed it without terrifying anybody, well, other than us. And so he can continue on. That's his spin. I would say that's the first weather-induced spin of the race.
Yeah, nearly a waltz around. I mean, that was the slowest spin I think I've seen in quite a while. It's just the back end stepping around so slowly, and then the GT3s arriving on the scene so quickly. which nearly put him into the wall. But luckily, everybody survived that. And luckily, we've got this 3-car battle for the lead. And I think you're right, actually, about Brandon Wilson's pace at the moment, because he does look like he's got a little bit left in the tank, but he will continue to try and gain on the top 2.
Larson went very wide there at turn 2, and here goes Pat Pelchat. He's getting close, but he's not going for a move this time. But look at how close he is on the way through turn 4 here. You're not quite going to get the run, I don't think, of the Cadillac. All 3 different manufacturers represented in this series. Cadillac, followed by Acura, followed by Porsche in the front 3. It's great news and great to see as we see the other battle in the bottom right. More variety there with Cadillac versus Acura going on for 4th place, with another Cadillac just in behind. You might be able to see the red Cadillac of Edwin Onofre just in the background, but just as quickly as they've cleared the first round of traffic, they'll be into it very soon again. GT3s are just in front of them for the second time.
Yeah, and this is going to get a little bit interesting again between the leaders. We've seen Larson get past Pelchat, in part thanks to the traffic, in part thanks to his incredible opportunism up the inside. Can Pelchat try and repay the favour? We'll see. They'll come towards turn 1. They should be able to get away without too much traffic up towards the opening turn with the speed advantage that they have down the straight, and Pelchat far too far back to make any kind of move down in towards turn 1. But in the middle sector, we may see a couple of tricks being played, especially if we start to arrive on little trains of cars. But for the time being, there's only one up through turn 3, and then the track is relatively clear up towards the end of the Retro-Aposta.
That was either Bowie Suin or Miles Brown they just passed, and now they'll continue to make their way through the field, starting, it looks like Jake Cummings, that does, in the Corvette. So they will continue to overtake them one by one. And it may well be quite a slow process indeed. They'll pass Ken Copeland last, of course, because he is the GT3 leader, and that is by over a second now over Michael Brooks. It's a familiar top 4, actually, with Copeland, Brooks, Feliz and Gardner. They've all been the best 4, I think, in this race so far, as we see them battle on the way towards turn 1. I thought they were both coming in the pit lane there, the 2 of them, but actually it's just Brooks defending. Here goes Feliz on the outside line. The rain really falling now, and they are starting to feel the effects of it. Although Brooks hangs on this last time round for these two. They were in the high 34s or 35s. That is about 2 slower than their best lap time. That's about where we are at the moment, as that looks like Miles Brown, who's gone off to the side of the road again.
Yeah, he is not having a good race at all, Miles Brown. He's been up and down the order, isn't he? Not in the best way. That's Michael Brooks, though. Oh, getting a little bit nervy on the curb. It looked like he was going to spin around there for half a second, but Shin Feliz going to be sitting behind and looking to make the move, but he's not able to do anything for the time being. Through Ferradura, they'll come, and Brett Gardner's getting involved in this now, but they will continue as they are, or will they? Shin Feliz looking for the move. Meanwhile, I think there's a battle for between GTPs.
There certainly is. They're at the first sector of the racetrack where it is easier to make the passes, and Brandon Wilson this time has made it happen. He really got slowed up by traffic in that first time round, but now he is there to stay, and he's up to second position. Can Shane Larson hang on from him as they make their way through? This is the radar currently. We're at this very early stage of rainfall, but it's very patchy, and it's a really thin band of rain as well. But it's not a really long race. If this was an endurance race, it would be a light shower, soon forgotten about. However, it is only an hour long, and so this may well sustain to the very end of the race, or at least when it's too late to really change conditions. In towards the final few corners they go. Pat Pelchat decides to go wide as Larson and Wilson go to the inside. Oh, it's a dive down the inside from one of the Mustangs, and Pat Pelchat's the one who's been slowed up this time by the traffic. Brandon Wilson has been gaining from it as the roles reverse. Shane Larson will be on the defence again. He's been making some really brave moves into turn 1, but it's going to have to be the big defence this time as they make their way into the corner. He looks, but Wilson decides to stay behind for now.
And he's looking for 2 in 2 laps at turn number 4, maybe, as they come through turn 2 and into towards turn 3. Is Larson going to get the run he wants through with the GT3 on the inside? It's going to be okay, but here comes Brandon Wilson. He's tucked up on the rear wing. He's going to go to the inside. Yes, he is just about. Oh, things better onto the grass. He realised there was no room at the end to keep his car on the circuit and had to back off. But he's still looking. He's still hunting for this move. Pat Pelchat, though, eking himself closer as they work their way through the middle sector.
Grass is not the best idea at the best of times, but when it's wet, I would suggest maybe not. And so Brandon Wilson came to the same conclusion as well and decided to stay behind. But would you believe it, we're already a third of the way through this race. Only 40 minutes remaining. These dry tyres are retaining temperature and they are still okay. And it's making me feel, Darren, as if maybe this will be a passing shower, or at least a shower light enough that the dry tyres can continue to sustain. As you see on the left-hand side, only Barry Cochrane and Jeff Cummings have taken the gamble. That's one in each class.
Yeah, well, it may be working out for them in terms of pace, but is it really going to work out when you have to take the extra pit stop to go back into the dries later? I mean, will they have to? We'll wait and find out, but it's a very, very big gamble at this stage. You wouldn't necessarily think it's the right strategy, and if you're going to be at the front of a race, you're not going to risk it for that kind of strategy. Brandon Wilson's not going to risk anything. He's trying to get through the GT3 through turn 1, does it effectively. Great run through 2 and 3. Looks like he's going to have a run down the rest of Boston towards the seat of Interlagos, but at the same time, we've got this battle going on in the GT3. This is Felice, and this is Michael Brooks fighting for P2. You can see Brett Gardner in the background, and the battles at the front of the fields in both categories are finding themselves in towards the middle sector now.
Oh, look at this. Felice late braking and not quite going for it. That would have been special in these damp conditions. He's still slightly alongside, but he's not going to have any joy out there, I wouldn't have thought. And he does tuck in behind. Same story for Brandon Wilson, who's gone for it. Oh, I'm not even sure he meant to do that, but he's broken late. He's jammed it down the inside of Larson for the lead. And now round the outside through turn 9. He's going to have the place. He's going to have the positioning, but Larson goes back again. Oh, that's a really tight margin to get down. He can't quite do it. Pat Pelchak just chuckles to himself and thinks, I'll back off the miss, thank very much, because this could end in disaster. But Brandon Wilson does have the lead. There is that battle for second we were just watching. Felice almost taking a shot to the back of Brooks as they came out of Chun Chow. They're going to have to go inside of one, outside of the other here as the leaders in GTP. Oh, they scatter. Larson goes to the inside, and I don't think he's going to be close enough to do anything this time round as he comes into pit lane, Shane Larson.
Really thinking that he's going to try something different. Brandon Wilson definitely has the pace advantage as Nathan Ray is now going for Dave Menino as they work their way up towards turn number 1. Menino looking for the inside line. I think he's going to get it on Nathan Ray. Up the inside, a bit of an up and under as it looks like Ray's looking for it in the 35. Can't quite do it, but they'll work their way through the corner with the GT3s all around them. There's another driver. That's Bradley Holly getting involved. Where's he come from in all of this? He's just got a great run through turn 2 and 3, and he's going to be fighting through 4. This is an absolutely crazy mid part of the race. This rain is really causing havoc now.
It's Edwin and Offra, not Bradley Holly, but yeah, it's it's okay. Making his way up into 4th place briefly, but stays behind again. This rain has recently gotten really bad, I think, and here goes Brett Gardner. It's about how you can deal with it now. These, I don't think, are the right tyres anymore. We're getting to the very close to the crossover point, although the lap times, to be fair, of Barry Cochrane and Jake Cummings are not quite there yet. It's a spin in the background, meanwhile, for oh dear, this is getting tricky now. You can see the sliding around from Michael Brooks, who somehow still holds 2nd place. Brett Gardner's been side by side with Felice for ages. He's now finally through, and they now finally allow Menino, Ray and Onofra to get down the inside, but not definitively. These GT3s do deal with the corners in the wet weather conditions a little bit better than the GTPs, until of course they get into the traction zones and the straights, in which case they do fly away again. But I think these conditions are very close to wets. We're seeing a lot of spray. We're seeing a lot of difficulty in the middle sector. We've got to be thinking about them very shortly.
Yeah, there's no way that the drivers can sustain this as they come down towards turn 1 once again. Clearly drivers are struggling. Once again, we're seeing this is going to be Nathan Ray and Dave Menino fighting as they come through turn 3. Once again, they are both struggling to get on the traction. Edwin Onofra is looking in the back of this one. Bradley Holly, he made a move on the last lap, but he's nowhere near these guys. As down to the inside goes Nathan Ray. He's going to control the line. He's going to control the position, but Dave Menino back up the inside. He's got the inside line through 5. He's going to pick on the outside for 6 and 7. This battle just continues on. They will not leave each other alone, and they are committed for P3. Menino around the outside. He's committed. He's got it done, and unless Nathan Ray sends it somewhere in this middle sector, Menino's going to have a chance to pull away.
Brooks is back ahead of Felice. They still can't leave each other alone. Oh, and Gardner goes very wide there. He's not going to be able to take a place after going out there. So I guess the next question for us to answer is, did Shane Larson put on wet tyres? 24 seconds suggests that he did, and we've got it confirmed. He did indeed put wet tyres on. Of course, we can't tell you lap times yet. He's only done now. That's not very useful. Barry Cochrane continues to make mistakes, I'm afraid, and so we've not really got a representative lap time from him in GTP. It's very difficult for Wilson and Pelchat to know whether to respond to this or not, because there is no data to suggest the wets are better yet. However, Shane Larson is catching Neil Alexander. I'm not sure whether that tells us very much at all, but that is happening as, meanwhile, the battle for third continues to not go away. Nathan Ray gets ahead of Dave Menino again. There's contact. Oh dear. Ray gets and holds on to the place, I should say, in third. Brett Gardner, meanwhile, for third in GT3 is back ahead of Jim Felice again as we go on board with Menino. These have got to be wet conditions now, surely.
Yeah, you can see how difficult it is. It's treacherous now for these guys to be making their way through. The spray, the fog, nothing is helping them at the moment as they will continue on. Shane Larson, he's catching, most certainly, to the back of the guys that he's battling, well, I mean, that he's around in terms of overall order. It remains to be seen whether he's catching the leader. This is the battle. Nathan Ray, Dave Menino, where have we heard this before? They continue to battle lap after lap after lap. What a move if he can get it around the outside. I wasn't expecting him to be able to make it there. Dave Menino, he's catching out Nathan Ray. He's up to P3. And here comes Edwin Onofre as well through turn 10.
As bad as this is, by the way, even these drivers fighting are quicker than Shane Larson at the moment. So he is catching Neil Alexander, he is catching Miguel Rios, but the top five were all more than 2 seconds faster than Shane Larson last time round. He's made that early call as Michael Brooks gets back into second again after that battle with Brett Gardner. They continue their battle from Mosport, of course, when the first half of the race they were fighting for the win with one another. Well, it's Ken Copeland leading at the moment, and neither of them can seem to catch him. So they're fighting between themselves for second instead. Outside line into the final corner for Gardner. That'll be impressive. Oh, he's managed it, though. The wet line, the karting line, seemingly working, even though they're on dry tyres at the moment. Make that make sense. Shane Larson has a minute 30.9 last time round. This time round for Wilson, 28.1. So clearly 2 seconds quicker. As meanwhile, Pat Pelchat loses 2.5 seconds to Wilson. Not sure what's gone on there. And Michael Brooks is losing speed on the run up towards turn 1 as well. Jim Felice on the outside of him. They both break as late as possible into turn 1. And Felice hangs on, or I should say, obtains third place.
I mean, it's difficult to know where to look at the moment. Drivers moving up and down the order just because everybody is struggling in these conditions. They'll be losing a couple of tenths in each corner. This is Pat Pelchat coming up to some really, really bad traffic through the opening couple of turns. Can't get through at turn 1. Can't get through at turn 2. The line closed off into turn 3, and he is not going to have a great time. Nathan Ray is towed back to the pit lane. Nathan Ray, the 35, fighting with Dave Menino. He is spun and towed back to the pit lane. That's dramatic in the battle for the podium spots.
And for the championship as well, he is Pat Pelchat's closest challenger, and it's a totally unforced and self-made error, I'm afraid, from Nathan Ray. A very rare error, a very rare mistake from Nathan Ray. He very rarely goes off on his own like that, and I'm afraid that might be his day done. He, of course, had a bit of a stumble at Zolder, but that was a very difficult day for everybody. He just gets on that outside curb, tried to correct it one way, tried to correct it the other, but the wall was there to collect him.
Yeah, and there was no escaping that, was there? I mean, you could almost see the car just stop into the wall. We often see on iRacing, cars can bounce away, but car deading itself into the wall. It's just not going anywhere.
Ken Copley has been caught. What the hell's going on here? Meanwhile, Shane Larson comes through on the both of them, and surely he's got to be laughing at the moment because his tyres are starting to... He was quicker than Pat Pelchat last lap for the first time, although we did see the replay of an incident that Pelchat had on that. That might be the reason. Another 30.6 from Larson. He loses another 1.5 seconds to Brandon Wilson. As meanwhile, is that the sun coming out? It looks like it's getting a lot brighter all of a sudden.
The sun's got its hat on, hasn't it? I mean, this could dry the track pretty quickly. That is going to be disaster for Shane Larson if that is the case. He has pitted, of course, but he's on those wet tyres. He'll have to get back onto some dries. As we're in the eye of the storm by the looks of it.
We are,
quite literally.
Very much so.
If that was a hurricane, that'd be the eye.
As it's known, science lessons with Dara on a Thursday evening. Very good. Onto the start-finish straight for Dave Menino and Edwin Onofre. He's not getting anywhere here, Onofre, even in the slipstream, and here he goes. He do it on the brakes, and well, it looks like he does have the braking performance to do it. Very nice move. And spoke too soon. Back comes Dave Menino And it just shows you can't call these battles really. The lines you have to take because of these wet weather conditions, even if you're not on wets, they do change from the regular racing line.
Yeah, it's so difficult to pick out the right line, isn't it, at the moment, because we've seen drivers do really well on that outside line, but they're still on the dry tyres, so it's not necessarily going to be your first thought, as we see more action from the drone as we come through the final couple of corners. Ken Copeland leading, but a three-way battle in the GT3s. Don't count out the likes of Brooks and Costello, Joey Costello that is, because they're right behind, as I thought for a second Ken Copeland was coming into the pit lane with the line he was taking, but just the normal line it seems as they run through towards the opening turn.
Yeah, Feliz was though instead. So
that's what I saw. That's definitely what I saw.
No, I thought Copeland was coming in as well. I don't think he quite had all four wheels to the left. Sorry, of the painted line. But there you go. Doesn't matter. He's not in. Instead, Jim Feliz is. Difficult call coming up actually, because I think the tyres are now actually better. However, they're certainly more consistent. However, they're not going to be better for very long looking at the weather radar we've got. So I guess the call at the moment is to just tough it out and just, stay on these dry tyres, even though I think theoretically the wet weather tyres can go quicker. It's better to stay out on these dries and just suffer for the moment, because as you say, you won't have to make two stops when it's inevitably dry enough for dries later on. I mean, it must be if we're already seeing the end of the storm nearly 30 minutes in before the end.
Yeah, but it's still difficult to say, because of course there was still more rain on the way. Inside line, Brett Gardner, has he got the move done? He's got it initially through the middle of the corner. The exit though gonna favour Ken Copeland around the outside at turn 10, inside at turn 11, but Ken Copeland is not gonna have the run. What a move, commitment from Brett Gardner. He's back into the lead after a very brief time out of it, and here comes Michael Brooks looking to get a good exit out of the corner. Copeland nearly loses it, and it nearly takes out Michael Brooks as well.
It looks like we've been trying to find any incident that meant that Ken Copeland lost 2 seconds in one go. Haven't really found one, just coming to the conclusion that the Mercedes is not enjoying these sort of slick conditions that still require dry tyres quite as much as the McLaren and the Mustang are, or indeed any other manufacturer. It looks like he really is struggling. There are the times for Ken Copeland in relation to the leader, I think, the new leader, Brett Gardner in the Mustang. Look at the red times. Look at the time differences as well. That's 3 laps in a row up there. He's lost more than a second in one go.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him slide. I mean, it's very possible that a couple of those slides have compounded and cost him a couple of tenths each. More battling. This is Menino and Onofre down in towards turn number 1. Menino's just going to be able to keep this position, but Edwin Onofre in that 99 car, looking to get himself into the top 2 now, as others have either pitted or fallen by the wayside a touch. But he's going to have a bit of a run towards turn 4. Not going to be anywhere near close enough, though, to make the move. I'm going to sit him behind once again, but what a dramatic race this is, I think, is going to end up being in the grand scheme of the championships, because drivers like Shane Larson are trying something different. He's definitely in the championship picture. This could be the race that he looks back on and thinks, well, this cost me any kind of hope at the championship, particularly since that he's got no points dropped to fall back onto.
Exactly. And he's starting to lose time now as well. There's the last 3 laps to Brandon Wilson, all of which is, 2 of the 3 anyway, are big losses. I have spotted 1 or 2 laps in which he's been quicker than either Jack or Wilson. He's never been quicker than both. He's never been the fastest driver in the field. And I'm afraid this is looking like the wrong call for Larson now, because Wilson and Pelchat are seeing drying conditions, are going to see drying conditions. Either Larson has got to stay out there on the wets and suffer immensely in the final 25 minutes, or he's got to bite the bullet and pit for a second time, which would be disastrous. For the reasons you outlined, he will lose every single point in this race that he loses today will count towards the championship because of that DNS in the opening round of the season at Mosport.
And it's going to hang over his head, I think, especially if he gets close over the final 3 races. He's been the driver, arguably one of, if not the most informed driver over the last few weeks. So he has really been on top of it. He is going to be gutted if these wet tyres don't end up working a little bit better. Look at the run, though, from Edwin Onofre. He just used the up and under through turn 3. Dave Menino was caught behind the GT3. And for P3, it's Edwin Onofre inside line at turn number 4. But look at that line from Dave Menino. It's an incredible line around the outside.
Yeah, it's the wet line, I suppose. The racing line's the norm. seem to apply at the moment. As out the pit lane comes Michael Brooks. Is that a second stop from him? Oh, no, it's the first one. He is still on wet tyres here, and that is a surprise. Considering the drying circuit, he has decided wet weather tyres is the place to be. Jim Feliz also has, and to be fair, Feliz way ahead of Brooks here. So maybe it has been the right call. In fact, he's 5 seconds ahead of Michael Brooks, even though Brooks had a slightly shorter pit stop 2 laps ago. Feliz has gotten into the best placed of those who have pitted. Does that mean he is going to be the race leader in a few moments' time? I suspect it might well do.
Yeah, this is going to be a really crucial, I think, 5-10 minutes worth of the race, just to see whether these drivers can keep it on the circuit. It's still raining again. We don't necessarily know exactly when that will end, but drivers just have to adapt to the conditions. They have to keep their wits about them. We've seen how difficult it has been, the treachery that they've had to manage throughout this race. You can see that wet racing line. Maybe that's just not necessarily intentional, going just a little bit too far deep there through the final corner. But all around this circuit, there is danger laced. We talked about the camber in qualifying. It doesn't necessarily help with the wet conditions. Sure, it helps a little bit with the drainage of the surface, but in parts of the circuit, it really works in the opposite way, and it makes it a little bit more slippery, and it's really difficult to judge exactly where that begins.
Oh, I've just been saying that Shane Larson has never been the fastest in GTP. Well, he just has, so there you go. Maybe that's the jinx he needed from me. We'll have our tower back in a few minutes' time, by the way. Don't worry about that as we go back to about place in the GTP order. This is fighting through traffic again. And a spin, I'm afraid. A spin in the background for Matthew Denis, I think. Menino, I think that is. Dave Menino, who's making his way back out there again. Comes out side by side with Barry Cochran, who, of course, made that pit stop a very long time ago now. And Menino, in that case, has lost lots of time to Edwin Onofre. Speaking of losing lots of time, Ken Copeland is going to lose even more there on the outside of the final corner as he sees Brett Gardner get further and further ahead of him. But they're starting to see in GT3 the wet tyres are the prevailing one. Jim has got the lead here.
Yeah, this is going to become a really interesting phase of the race because if the wets continue to work for the next 10 minutes or so, I think that those drivers are going to feel validated for their decisions. If it doesn't, and we might start to see some people regret their actions, but this is going to be crucial. How long does the rain stay? If it starts to dry up now, then you're going to question whether the wet tyres are going to work at the end of the race. But for the time being, looks like it's working well enough. Here's Peter Moller fighting with Michael Brooks as Brooks goes to the inside line. The exit of the final corner isn't setting the world on fire, and he's not going to really be able to have too much of a go unless he gets a little bit of slipstream towards turn 1. But it does look like he's going to be getting a very nice helping of slipstream through this triple cornered final, or flat finish straight even.
I think trying to out-drag a Porsche and traction in wet weather conditions is always going to be tricky, no matter what tyres you've got on, to be honest. I think if the Porsche had ice cubes for rear tyres, it would still be better than any other GT3 in that kind of area. But Peter Moller holds on to 5th place as a result. And look at the gap up to Feliz. Over 8 seconds. He's flying on these wet weather tyres. He's got them up to temperature 2 laps before Brooks has, and he's clearly reaping the benefits. Look at him go. He's absolutely flying out there at the moment. Previous lap for him, 42.7. Last lap for Gardner, 43.0. 44.4 for Ken Copeland. He should have been in ages ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to really judge for these drivers because they haven't really been able to know exactly what the conditions are going to do. So some of them may even have been scared to go into the pit lane for fear of making the wrong decision. But even still, drivers really have to be making their way down pit road soon, don't they?
I think for Ken Copeland, though, you are right. But for Ken Copeland, if your car is behaving so badly on dry tyres and the wet weather conditions, I don't think it matters which is the best tyre to go on. If you want to win the race, I think you've got to just jump in pit lane and think, well, the dry tyres are rubbish. I might as well try the wet ones because at the moment I'm going nowhere. He's continuing to go nowhere and he's continuing to lose time. Another half second given up to Gardner last time round. He's surely going to give up multiple seconds to Feliz, probably Brooks as well, now that he's passed Peter Moller. So I don't really understand the logic in staying out there. I suppose he might have championship head on and think, I don't want to do anything too out there today because just a good day will keep me in the championship lead. But nevertheless, if he wants to win, I think he should have been in at least quarter of an hour ago.
Yeah, but again, as you mentioned, the championship could be exactly what he's thinking about, as we're now nearly seeing a battle between Brooks and Moller, but they will stay single file towards turn 1. Obviously, coming into this race, Copeland has a 28-point advantage. This is a manageable lead for him. If he feels like he's struggling in these conditions, but not struggling too much that he's going to lose the car completely and, plummet down the order, then staying out may not be the worst idea. Yeah, sure, he loses the position to Brett Gardner, he'll lose points, but going onto the wet tyres is a bit of an unknown entity. You don't necessarily want to be making that kind of risk, especially if your championship rivals are really benefiting in these conditions. Whilst I was waffling on about that, Kyle Robertson getting to the position on Peter Moller, both on the dry tyres, and the next driver behind them is Joey Costello. See how quickly and if he can catch up to these two in the next 90 minutes.
It's a very interesting final third of the race coming up. This has absolutely flown by so far. Round 6 of the PRL GTP GT3 Series here from Interlagos. And it is still Brandon Wilson leading the way. There he is, in fact, just on your screen, just behind Miguel Rios in 8th place, about to put him one lap down for the first time. Oh, hello. That was a slide through the Pico de Pato as he tried to get the power on here. Now, last time round, 130.3 from him. Shane Larson, 130.8. It seems that there is, in GTP, almost no difference between the two tyre compounds as things stand. And these dry tyre runners, as it gets drier, I think are going to continue to feel slightly vindicated. They've weathered this storm, if you like, if you excuse the pun. They've managed to weather the wet weather, and they are coming out the other side of it with the better tyre option. And maybe Pelshat and Wilson have just got this right.
And it may be more plain sailing for them towards the end of this race. Oh my word, that pun's interrupted quite as it deserved to be, quite frankly, by these two fighting their way through turn number 3. Brandon Wilson just looking to get through here. Oh my word, and chopping across. That was quite aggressive on Miguel Rios as they come towards turn 4, and Rios backing off quite a long way before they get to the braking zone. I don't think Brandon Wilson was really going to be taking no for an answer. That was incredibly aggressive.
It's one of those, just to say, get in behind me here, please, and go away. So that's exactly what Brandon Wilson will do now. He'll push on, and we'll see when he pits. I mean, these dry tyre runners are going to have to make a decision at some point because they'll run out of fuel, of course. All PRL GTP GT3 Series races require a pit stop from everybody, not because it's required in the rules, but because you won't make it on fuel unless you do something incredibly slow and save fuel far too much. So you will have to pit at some point and make a decision. That's what Brett Gardner's faced with at the moment, leaving Ken Copeland to lead again. But I'd imagine Brett Gardner is going to go onto the wet tyres, is he? Or will he stay on the dries? I haven't seen him go up on the jacks.
No, which was, I mean, you wouldn't want to change tyres now, especially with the track looking like it's drying a little bit. So I think that'd probably be the best idea for Brett Gardner. I wouldn't have, you're talking about that they need fuel to get to the end. Of course, we've had a wet race in parts. I mean, that may come into play, may allow drivers to go that little bit longer before making their decision. Unlikely that anybody can get to the end, but that's why we're still seeing so many drivers still out on the circuit. Will be interesting when we see the last pit stops of the race and how far drivers can try and eke this out. I'm sure a couple of drivers may be looking at fuel numbers, and if they can think that they may be able to make it work and not lose too much time, they might try it. That's going to be a heavy stretch, and I expect that we're going to see more pitters than anybody trying to do that. Tony Costello's coming out of the pit lane now. He's going to be right in a battle. I think it's going to be a three-way battle indeed. On the exit of turn 3, they're too wide. He nearly makes it 3.
Ever so briefly, as they continue to fight for 5th place. Robertson very late on the brakes there, but he has pulled it up in time. Oh, fair enough. And he will hold on to the position. Peter Moller is the Porsche just in behind them all, as Dave Menino looks like he's in a battle with Bradley Holly. Meanwhile, it's a real fall, I'm afraid, for Dave Menino, and that's because he's been in the pit lane, didn't quite realise. So Bradley Holly makes his way through, and he'll be stuck behind a GT3. That's possibly the worst timing he possibly could have imagined there for Dave Menino, and he will make his way back out again. But look at him, he's ahead of Shane Larson. That's how advantageous it's been in GTP to stay on the dries. It's got him ahead of Shane Larson. Meanwhile, Ken Copeland's into the pit lane. We've got a very interesting situation in GT3 where Gardner, and I think Copeland's going to do it as well, have stayed on the dry tyres. They've said, we're ahead already of Felice and Brooks. We'll take our 8-second shorter pit stop and we'll see if we can hang on.
Yeah, and let's see if they can hang on, quite frankly, as they run their way through the final stages of the race. Going to be really, really interesting. Ken Copeland, though, coming out of the pit lane, will come out in the lead. Can he maintain it? Brett Gardner's going to have the momentum down towards turn 4, but I think Ken Copeland has it. And for all the talk about what he would do in the strategy, it doesn't matter. He's weathered the storm, as you said earlier. He's going to continue into the lead now. Can he pull away from Brett Gardner in the final 15 minutes here? This has been a very good little strategy from Ken Copeland.
Yeah, I am rapidly losing my my credentials to talk about strategy in any form whatsoever with every wheel that Ken Copeland turns, because he's leading the race now. And after I criticised him pretty badly. So there you go. That tells you all you need to know. Bradley Holly into the pit lane. Meanwhile, he's just a couple of weeks away from appearance number 500 in the PRL. And so we'll be eagerly awaiting that and hoping it's on our broadcast and not on... that's happened, of course, on Wednesday night. This is Tony Costello and the fight for 5th place, continuing on with Carl Robertson just behind, and Peter Moller is in the Porsche just in the background there as well. Still a real mix of tyre compounds, as you can see on the left-hand side. Will Brandon Wilson do anything strange here? I'd imagine he'll stay on the dry tyres as well.
Yeah, here is another picture of Brandon Wilson. Of course, he was one of the fastest drivers, if not the fastest driver in that wet weather period, and he has come into the pit lane with only less than 15 minutes to go. I was just looking at some of the drivers still on wet tyres. I realised that TJ Yankee is one of them. I wonder if he is struggling to see the fact that it has stopped raining after, or looking through that helmet. I don't know if he's still wearing that helmet. I really hope he is. Oh, he is! Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, maybe that's it. I remember George Russell saying that he thought it was raining and it was just the sweat in his visor a couple of years ago. I wonder if still feeling the same thing rather than maybe thinking about pitting for some dries.
I mean, I think the difference is in real life, in an open cockpit car, you can actually feel the rain as well as see it.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't happen in sim racing very often. Some real leakage problems. So there you go. Onto the pit lane for Carl Robertson and Peter Moller. They've taken their battle to the pit lane. It looks like Doug Evans was trying to catch them. He's just in the background. Oh, and there they go. They lead together, which is what you'd expect, to be honest. And so they will continue their battle out on the circuit in the final 12 minutes or so. It looks like in GT3 then, pretty much everybody has pitted now. And it looks like the dry tyres are the ones to have. The change onto wet tyres at Feliz, I think, was made at the right point. However, the time it's cost them is effectively the margin that there is now between Copeland and Gardner. And so now Feliz has got to somehow catch them on a drying circuit on the wrong tyres. And I'm afraid that's just not going to happen.
Make the strategy work on the wets if they had to get back onto the dry tyres. I was trying to find a word there. As Brandon Wilson, that's not Brandon Wilson, I was looking at the timing tower. That was Adam Ostrich making the move on Aguiar as they make their way through turn 4 and 5. But you'd have to be gaining on the wet tyre up about 3 seconds a lap to make it work if you had to come into the pit lane and change tyres again. That simply didn't happen. We saw, if anything, some of the wet runners losing a little bit of time, which is why they are really struggling now. They can't really afford to come into the pit lane again. But if you take a quick look at Shane Larson's gap to Dave Menino every now and again, just going to see it falling and constantly falling. It's growing. Well, as I say, that's coming back down again as he's down the straight. But through the corners, he is losing time hand over fist to the rest of the guys, and it is really costing him time. Through turn 1, we'll go with him. On the entry, it's 9.1. As he comes to the opening sector, he's nearly losing a full second in 3 corners.
Yeah, it's going to be a real big loss for Shane Larson, and a day he could really ill afford it. Nathan Ray, of course, crashing out will give Pelchat an even bigger lead in the championship. It could be upwards of 20 points at the end of the day. Nathan Ray should hold on to second. Shane Larson will still be third, but he'll be nearly 40 points behind with only 3 races to go. Pat Pelchat now pits in. Of course, I'm presuming he's going to finish second behind Brandon Wilson, but that might not even happen at this stage. As Pelchat pulls to a stop, he's barely going to have completed his stop before Wilson comes past him, so I think I will be correct there, although he will be very close to the end of the pit lane. There goes Brandon Wilson, and Pelchat hasn't even got underway. Now he does, just about in time, and so it will be second place, but since Brandon Wilson's missed and scored 0 in 3 of the 5 rounds so far, he's not a worry in the championship. Pelchat is still having a very good day.
Yeah, I think the only sadness he may have at not winning the race is that it won't go in the statistics books for us to talk back upon in seasons to come when he is surely up near the front once again, because he is beating everybody he needs to be beating. And that's really all he needs to do right now. It doesn't matter that he's losing to a driver who's never going to be able to beat him in the championship. I don't even know if it's mathematically possible if Pat Pelchat turns up every week. So he's not going to be worried with that at all. But as the sun has, magically appeared here in Interlagos, the track really does look like it's drying quite heavily. But Sector 3 is probably a little bit damper. We'll see it now, and you can see a little bit of spray, but rest of the track, obviously the rain came in from the turn 3, turn 1 area and went out towards the other side of the circuit. That kind of half of the circuit is pretty dry at the moment.
It is drying out now. It's really fascinating to see how the rain changes. Got to say, Michael Brooks now being overtaken by Tony Costello as Dave Menino has gone off as well at turn 8, I think that was. It was, yep. And he's still 4th, but a little bit less ahead of Shane Larson. This is what happened, riding on board with him. You mentioned it's drying out, and that is true, but you still can't go on the curbs yet.
No, you never really want to be going on the curbs in any kind of wet conditions. They just get so slippery. The white painted lines are so tricky. See Bradley Holly there.
He's had that up for weeks.
He's still got his T-cam on.
Yep. He's had that up for weeks, that sort of skeleton dressed in the background. Apparently, heard from someone in YouTube chat a few weeks ago now that he absolutely loves Halloween. So there you go, no surprise to see him.
Probably why he's been preparing for it all month.
Yeah. Exactly. That's of course
What's
a
the
veteran
mask on?
I don't really know what that is, but anyway. Brett Gardner has suddenly lost 15 seconds to Ken Copeland, and he was really getting close to him. Oh no, he has got a rear wing. That was just the camera angle. But where has he lost all this time? Brett Gardner, I don't believe he's been in pit lane based on what I've seen from the timing and etc. Let's see what happened though in towards turn 2. He's up on that curb. He was really trying to chase Ken Copeland down, but that is the mistake that sealed the deal. Brett Gardner is not going to be winning this race by the looks of things.
No, and we also saw a GTP coming through, and they didn't look like they were going to be too comfortable in there, but managed to avoid the incident. But for Brett Gardner, now it's just a case of hanging on. You'd think that he'd be able to, especially with Jim Felice behind him on the wet tyre still. He's still got about 17 seconds back to a driver on a dry, but he's not really going to be wanting to lose too much time. Here's Robertson and Moller. We've seen them quite a lot throughout this race. They're now battling each other through turn 3. Little bit of contact, little bit of a slide. Here comes a GTP as well to top it all off. But Robertson should hold that position on Moller down into turn 4, and he'd fancy himself to try and pull away a little bit once again in this middle sector.
That was pretty close actually to disaster for those two. I wonder whether these two can actually catch some of those further up ahead on wet tyres here. Tony Costello has dispatched Michael Brooks very quickly indeed, and now he's only just under 10 seconds behind Jim Felice. I don't think that's an impossible gap to cross at all actually. Tony Costello could be on the podium by the end of this, even though there are only 6.5 minutes remaining. Still a good 4 laps here for him, so don't count him out just yet. Let's see what the lap times are though. This time we'll do the maths as to whether it is possible or not. Jim Felice last time round, 39.9. That's slower than the 2 ahead, obviously discounting Brett Gardner because he has had a big crash on that, or big spin at least. Last time round, Tony Costello gains 4.3. That is a huge margin. And if he does that again, he'll be there with laps to spare.
Yeah, the wets are not the tyre to be on at all. It's going to be horrible for them right now. This is right. Jim Felice on this wet tyre. What's happened here? Down in towards Herradura. There's no pace. Well, on the curb, and it's not helping it out at all. You can see some of the GTPs coming through, struggling in the middle sector, as we've expected all evening long. But it's almost a tiptoe, isn't it, through this middle sector, and it just must be so painful to, feel the time eke away through the car.
It is very, and helplessly so as well. It is really difficult to deal with indeed. Evan Henneman's not that far behind Joey Costello, but I don't know if he's quite close enough. Look at the loss here for Jim Felice, 1.8 seconds. Goodness me. I mean, they are teammates, so I wonder whether Costello will prioritise Felice's championship aspirations and help his mate out, but I'm not seeing that as likely, I've got to say. Tony Costello hasn't been at very many of the rounds so far this season, or he hasn't scored in many of them, I should say. DNF'd at Zolder and Mosport earlier on the season, didn't start 2 weeks ago at Road Atlanta, so he's way out the picture, although he is helping SRT to team goals, of course. He is going to be behind Felice here very shortly, though, and he might well take a podium for himself for the second week in a row.
It would be impressive, wouldn't it, if he was able to do that. Shane Larson off the track down at turn 6. He's lost out to Bradley Holly. It's not going well for the 117. Got a very big gap back to Jeff Evans, but this is what happened on the curb, losing the rear end. And that's dancing around. It's almost like being on ice on that rear end, and just had to wait for a space to get that car righted again, and really struggling. You mentioned teammates moment ago. Darian Roy, I've just seen in the YouTube chat as well, saying sadly he's out for the rest of the season with an injury. Of course, he's part of the Aerokinetics Nightblade racing team, and even though he's not here, the return of Brandon Wilson, despite not being around for the Drivers' Championship, could be really important for the Teams Championship as they fight with Solprak.
Yeah, very disappointing to see for Darian Roy, but hopefully he gets well soon. Suffered a cut ligament in his right foot, so out for the season. So hopefully we'll see him back in a PRL race very shortly. Larson's in. Well, is this a drive-through for incidents, or yes, it is. I was going to say that's very late to bite the bullet and come in. Well, he's got 20 seconds to Evans. He's got probably 3 laps left. He can hang on here if he just takes it sensibly now. Don't try and go quickly. Just go sensible. Finish 6th and keep yourself in the game as far as the championship is concerned, even if that margin will go upwards of nearly 40 points to Pat Pelchat by the end of the day.
Pat Pelchat is going to be in a very, very comfortable position. We saw it last season when he was the dominant force, and it was almost can anybody catch him at all? The answer in the end was no, and you struggle to find out if anybody's going to be able to catch him this time around either. That gap is growing out slowly but surely. Drivers who have been fighting with him, falling by the wayside tonight. Shane Larson not doing anything. Timothy Friese Larson, I don't even believe it, here this evening. So realistically, they'll both be a long way further out of contention. Nathan Ray is 4 laps down, as we've talked about. He's not going to be out of contention. I mean, Eben Onofre is there. It's going to be interesting, but they battle in the championship. GT3s are battling in their own championship, and this is really difficult for Jim Felice, isn't it, on these wet tyres?
He's been caught so quickly because Costello is on the dry tyres and it's the place to be, but now is he finally going to go through? Surely if they do change places, there will be coordination between the two. They didn't want to do it right in front of some prototypes. That would have been a bit silly, but now Costello does go through. Felice lets him have it. He knows there's no point battling from your teammate when there's almost nothing you can do anyway, and Tony Costello does get through into a podium place. It's going to be back-to-back podiums for Costello, and it's a great tyre call that's got him. I do really take my hat off to these dry tyre runners, especially in GT3, who saw some of their main rivals taking chunks of time out of them earlier on. These dry tyre runners held their nerve, and they made the right call in the end, as same goes for Evan Henneman. He's made his way through now on Joey Costello, up into 6th place.
And he's going to be 5th, surely, because he's only 2 seconds behind Michael Brooks and gaining quickly as well. So he'll be eyeing a top 5 in this race, and that'll be a very, very good result for him in the championship. It would only be his 2nd top 5 in the season. Mind you, he comes into this race 5th in the championship, just showing how consistency can really work, even if you're not in the top 5 in the race. This is getting very close. 2 GTPs coming through on a GT3, and Brandon Wilson just trying to survive to the end, and lapping, I believe. Is this Shane Larson he's lapping?
Yep,
I think it is.
Yep, it is. How's that for a moment as far as this championship's concerned? White flag shown at Interlagos, and Shane Larson, a championship protagonist, a real danger to Pat Pelchat in this championship with 3 wins on the bounce coming to this round. He has been lapped here at Interlagos. What a story this could be for the season as we make our way now out of the first few chicanes, or the first chicane I should say, overall, and make our way up towards the 4th corner. Meanwhile, Michael Brooks tries to hold back Evan Henneman. I can't imagine this is going to last very long either. And there you go.
Yeah, I mean, this is, no surprise to see Evan Henneman come through. It's taken him less than a lap to close that 2 seconds. And he's through.
Oh, no!
This is surely going to be second top 5. Is that Tony Costello?
Tony Costello's under fueled, I think. And he's stopping. Well, he stopped for quite some time, actually. He's probably not unchecked tyres, actually. 7 seconds is a long splash. But anyway, Jim Felice is going to get his podium back. Well, that's a strange one. Tony Costello will indeed finish 4th in the end after all that. Well, meanwhile, Brandon Wilson is going to become our 3rd different overall winner this season. He's had a stop-start season, I've got to say. He hasn't even been here since Zolder. But now he's back with a bang. So close at Mosport. This time he does seal the deal. In the rain at Interlagos, he stepped through the uncertainty. He holds his nerve on the dry tyres and he wins in GTP. Similarly, Ken Copeland holding his nerve in a real moment of difficulty early on in the Mercedes, by the way. Finishing 1st in GT3. On the dry tyres, more than 12 seconds ahead of Brett Gardner. He didn't make almost a single mistake in that race, even when the Mercedes was trying to throw him off. He's extended his championship lead with another 4th win of the season.
Both winners really do have to be applauded for their strategy calls. Such pressure that they were under and in such difficult conditions as well, particularly for Copeland, who we saw losing time. The rear end was stepping out everywhere. He was not comfortable in the car. His championship rivals were coming around him. I mean, Jim Felice, his championship rival, went onto a wet tyre. There was pressures on him to maybe make a change in the strategy, but he held firm. And in the end, winning comfortably, as we're still seeing. I mean, we've seen Michael Brooks, we've seen Carl Robertson. They've fought all race long, and into the final meaningful corner, they're still side by side.
Yeah, Joey Costello is losing places as well as Michael Brooks because of the tyres they're on. To Carl Robertson, who's up to 6th. It looks like Peter Moller's just going to run out of time to pass Joey Costello, although he's getting quite close. He's right in the slipstream here. He is going to run out of time. Is there a crash over the line for Brooks? He does make, he goes from one side to the other. I think he's just annoyed. He will finish 7th. In the end, but that was quite the run to the line in GT3. Jim Felice somehow finishes on the podium on the wet tyres, and that just puts that drive into perspective. A very strong result from a bad situation from him as we complete round 6 of the championship. That was a stunning race. Let's have a look at the race results here from that one. It's another win, or a first win, I should say, for Brandon Wilson. More points gained it is for Pat Pelchat. Edwin Onofre finishes on the podium ahead of Dave Menino, and Bradley Holly is in the top 5. Shane Larson was the first driver 1 lap down, taking a big hit in the point standings. Jeff Evans finished 7th after starting from pit lane. Miguel Rios 8th, with Mathieu Denis and Neil Alexander 9th and 10th. Devon Young and Barry Cochran were 2 down. Nathan Ray, after that crash, did re-emerge, but he finished 7 laps down. Nicholas Schwartz never did re-emerge after the rain, really. He finished 25 laps down. In GT3, Ken Copeland was not the fastest driver at all points in this race by any means, but he was the smartest and most consistent. He finished 12 seconds in the end ahead of Brett Gardner, and Jim Felice, the only driver on wet tyres to finish in the top, top 8 it's going to be in the end here, maybe more, top 6, excuse me. Tony Costello and Evan Henneman get into the top 5. Henneman just got past, along with Carl Robertson, Joey Costello towards the end. Peter Moller and Adam Ostrich also got through on a few others. Michael Brooks got a late penalty there. That's why he was smashing himself into the wall. He dropped down to 10th place. Eduardo Aguiar, Barry Surin and Sean Murphy all finished 1 lap down. Doug Evans and Titi Yankee, who couldn't really see that race, I wouldn't have thought, finished 2 laps down. Jake Cummings 6 down after that opening crash with Ostrich. Ian Brown finishing a long way down, along with John Krause, Mark Kalin, Miles Brown, and one other at the very back end of the field. I think it was indeed Aaron Kuklas, who did start, but I didn't really notice. So, unfortunately, left very, very early indeed. We will have a chat to Brandon Wilson at some point, but it doesn't look like he's quite ready for us yet. So we'll work our way up the podium today and start with Edwin Onofre, who joins us on the podium again. Congratulations, Edwin. 2nd, 3rd place in a row. How would you sum up that race in terms of dealing with the conditions and getting to the end? I'd imagine was a difficult ordeal in itself.
It was definitely difficult, but to be honest, I thought this was my race to lose because I was not prepared for the wet conditions at all. I have not practiced. I've only done I've only taken the practice session to practice in the dry, but nothing regarding to the wets. I am fortunate that it wasn't very heavy and the dry tires held up. I just had to take a different approach to the racing line. And then from there, I just had to cruise along. I had to get past Nathan Ray, who spun out in the same corner as Dave did. And that's how I was able to get up to P3. But I liked that race. Honestly, that was a lot of fun to drive, and that was pretty good.
It was a lot of fun to watch, certainly. Were you surprised by the way that the dry tyres held up for so long in the race?
I was debating at one point if I were to come into the pits, but as the race got wetter, I still had my spotter tell me that the session was not declared wet. So I was just hanging on and see if I can still find some grip with the dry tires. And it worked out in the end. I just had to worry about how much fuel I needed to take in for pit road, and that's how I was able to retain P3 from like 20 seconds behind from P4. Like I said, that was pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations on your third place in a row, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Thank you. Shout out to TechSport.
Thanks very much, everyone, and for their third place tonight. We're working our way up the podium today because why on earth not? Pat Pelchat will join us now then from second place. And Pat, it feels like it's been a while since we've talked to you. In reality, it's been 2 weeks after your stumble at Silverstone. It must be nice to bounce back here at Interlagos with another podium.
Absolutely. I think all the pieces fell together tonight. I didn't fight much, to be honest. Like at this point of the season, 3 races left. Really looking for the championship now, more than anything else.
Absolutely, you've gained on most your rivals. In terms of the wet weather conditions, though, was it the championship that was in your mind, or was it the actual conditions at hand? Because I always find these parts of races very interesting for championship contenders who want to play it safe, but they didn't really seem like a very safe call through the middle point of that race. So, what was in your mind most?
So thankfully, I had a teammate, Adrian, that races usually, but tonight he was there a bit late, so he was acting as a spotter for us. So he really helped us, make the right decision to the race. I did some testing this week, and we never reached a point where wets were actually. Well, we were very close to having to switch to wets. But seeing that the rain was going to stop, I think the best call was to stay on dries, which we did. And I think championship was more on my mind than anything. That's why I saw Shane Larson being usual aggressive. So he sent it down the inside in T1, trying to close the door, didn't close enough. So I said, all right, man, just go at it. And then I saw Brendan Wilson that had a crazy amount of pace behind her, and I also let him by. So I was hoping for them to fight, which kind of happened. But, it was a pretty decent race, honestly, result-wise and overall.
It was great fun to watch, certainly. Congratulations on second place tonight, Pat, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Thanks very much. Pat Pelchat there in second place. Just behind, of course, our race winner, Brandon Wilson, who can now join us. Welcome in, Brandon. Good to have you with us, and good to see you returning back to the podium again, which it feels like it's been a while since you have managed. How does it feel to be on the top step this time, though, at Interlagos?
Man, I tell you, it feels really good. Having to miss the last couple of weeks, either from being sick or just other things going on, to come back with a win feels really, really good.
Talk to us about the conditions. Were you ever tempted to go on the wet tires?
Not really. I did a few laps of testing in these kind of mixed conditions, and while it is a little sketchy, the dries are manageable as long as you are picking the right line. The racing line in the middle of the race got really slick, but there was some grip off the racing line, so I was able to keep it on track, which was the main thing, and just stay out.
Well, congratulations on making all those right calls and winning the race here tonight, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much, Brandon Wilson there, the winner overall. We'll work our way through the GT3s in the traditional order, so we'll go top to bottom with Ken Copeland, first of all, who has won again. Welcome in, Ken. Good to have you with us. Now, I want to chat to you about the middle part of that race, especially for yourself, because I'm not sure whether it was you or the car or both, but you seemed to suddenly lose 2 seconds on one lap, and then you couldn't seem to string a lap together like you had done before ever again, and you lost the lead by some distance. Then you got it back again, despite not having gone on the dry tyres. On the wet tyres. What on earth was going on in the middle of the race there?
Yeah, that's a classic example of me figuring that out as I go. I'm a fan of Interlagos, and I love this track, but those were my first laps with it being wet. So most of that midway through the pack or through the race laps were me trying to kind of figure out where the line was developing. Clearly, Brett was quick in the wet. Setup-wise, skill-wise, just practice-wise, he was quick. So all kudos to him on that front. But yeah, I was trying to figure it out. Went with kind of a lower downforce set generally to try and build a little bit of a gap in the dry, and then crossed my fingers and hoped that it dried up on the back end.
And it did, of course. It just seemed that you fell off a cliff, really, at one stage. You seemed to be coping all right, and then not, but you certainly recovered very well. I mean, were you never tempted at that stage, when you were struggling to get to grips with it initially, to just stick the wet tyres on? Because that's what I said in commentary at the time. I was thinking, well, even the Mercedes or you are not enjoying dry tyres on this wet circuit, so you might as well just stick the wets on and see what happens. Were you never tempted?
Not really. I know Mike did that. He had a moment, was losing time, so he decided to test out the wets. I was looking at the forecast during the race to try and keep an eye on how that percentage developed, and it pretty much stayed the same. So I was betting that the track was going to dry up on the back end. So pitting for 4 tires is going to waste a ton of time, especially if on the back end you've got to pit for 4 more. So if you look at Mike's times, he kind of dropped down the charts. That's what happens when you kind of gamble on it. But the track was pretty steady. It wasn't great on dry tires, but it wasn't really worth pitting and taking 4.
Congratulations on making those right calls and, of course, getting the win tonight. And thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, as always, for the awesome broadcast week to week. Great coverage.
Thanks very much. Ken Copeland there, the winner tonight here in GT3. Second was Brett Gardner in the Mustang, who also joins us. Brett, welcome in. I imagine we'll be running over that error out of turn number 2 in your mind a couple of times after this race, I would have thought. Just tell us about the spin that might have cost you at least a chance at the race win.
Yeah, I'm just starting to think that luck isn't on my side this season. My game froze for about half a second after, like, halfway between turn 1 and 2 there. And it just caught me so off guard, jarring me how it did that. So I just lost control of it there, which sucks. I really feel like that's maybe the 3rd or 2nd race this season that I probably could have won had I been there at the end. So
I mean, even despite this, you're 5 or less points, actually. I'm not sure where the fastest lap point went tonight, actually, but at least 5 points at the very most behind Jim Feliz now for 2nd in the standings. You pulled away further from Michael Brooks as well, even though Ken Copeland, of course, got us a bit further away. How are you feeling about that battle for 2nd now as we enter the final 3 rounds of the championship?
I guess it is going to be a battle for 2nd here through on the end. I think the penalty that I got this past week also really hinders my chances to get up there. So I look forward to battling with Jim the whole way. Maybe luck can turn and me and him can turn the tides on Ken in the later part of the season.
Absolutely. Congratulations on finishing 2nd though tonight, and thanks for coming to chat to us.
All right, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Brett Gardner there, the 2nd place driver from tonight. And finally, we can chat now to Jim Feliz from 3rd as well. Welcome in, Jim. The only driver to finish in the top 6 who put wet tyres on in the end of that race, or at any point during that race, actually, in GT3. Does that make you pleased in your own performance that you outperformed everyone else on that strategy so much, or are you ruining the error? Well, not particularly an error in strategy, but what turned out to be the wrong call in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of caught up with Brooks there at the start. He was making his Mustang pretty wide in front of me, so I figured why not, roll the dice and get off sequence, try something different. And, in the end, it ended up not quite paying off, and, probably needed an inter today rather than a full wet. But, still a very entertaining race, very eventful for sure. And I thought my teammate Tony Costello was going to take 3rd there. And then it looked like we got that extra lap there right at the end based on the overall leader, and he ended up having to do a quick stop for fuel. So I knew one of us was going to get 3rd, and happy with that result, I guess, regardless.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, was there ever a point where you thought you might be able to go on and win that? Because I've got to admit, I thought you might well go on and win at one point, because the GTPs had gone on wet tyres, some of them, and had no joy at all. You seem to be getting really quite some joy. You were the fastest driver on the circuit for quite some time, actually. But, of course, it cost you a lot of time to change the tyres, and eventually the race went away from you as well. But was there ever a stage when you really thought you might be able to win?
I think you nailed it. There was, a couple laps there where the wet was the tire to have, but, like you said, to change all 4 tires, it's about 21 seconds. So, ended up not quite being the right call in the end. I think I would have needed a little bit more rain on my side to make that happen. But, salvaging a third out of that, maybe despite being on the suboptimal strategy, I think is a pretty good takeaway. So happy with that.
Yeah, as I say, only driver in the top 6 to have put wet tyres on at any point and be up there. So congratulations on that, finishing third tonight, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Jim Foley is there third tonight in the GT3 class. Well, that was very exciting. I've got to say, thoroughly enjoyed our first proper sustained bit of wet weather here in the GTP GT3 Series. It certainly just didn't disappoint. We're not going to have any more rain, of course, for the remainder of this season at Sebring, Suzuka or Road America. We already know that. However, tonight really delivered and sets us up for Sebring again in 1 week's time.
Yeah, looking forward to Sebring. We thought it was going to come a bit early, but looking forward regardless. While we were doing the interviews, I have to say, you know me, I was trying to work out some kind of stat. I will say, of course, Interlagos is the most used GT3 circuit in the PRL, and after this race, we have now driven the equivalents in the GT3s alone at Interlagos from Baltimore to Houston. But looking forward to Sebring, and that's nowhere near either of those cities.
Oh dear, yeah, that's the kind of statistic that you will never use again, that I've come here to learn on RaceSpotTV, and so there you go. We'll be back again in 1 week's time, myself and Dara, with Sebring International Raceway from probably closer to 9 ET, to be honest, from the 7th of November. So make sure you join us for that. A few nights off here of the PRL here on RaceSpotTV. Of course, we'll be back racing again from Martinsville in the PRL Cup Series. That'll be going live also from 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday night. So it'll be very good to have your company then as well. But from myself, Ian O'Leary, Darrell Thacker alongside me, and Dustin Honest, who's been behind the cameras here this evening, it's goodbye from Interlagos. We'll see you in 1 week's time at the pumps of Sebring.